Hello and welcome to another game of Beyond All Reason. Today we're back on Supreme Isthmus and we're actually going to be taking a look at ephemera on the sea geo spawn. Now I'm just going to slow this down quickly because this is a very complicated spawn to spawn in. And that's one of the reasons why it's often reserved for the highest OS player on your team. Now a couple of things to mention is it is one of the more resource rich spawns. So like usual, you've got your 3 starting mechs at the top. You've got 1 there. So a lot of the other spawns will also have 3 to start off with and then 1 off to the side. But you've also got another 2 down here. Sometimes if this player does not bring their commander over with a transport, you can claim the 2 up here as well. But that's not very often at all. That's something to keep in mind though. If they do not claim it and you see that it's open, 100% go and claim that. But also he's going to use his commander to over here. He's going to bring his commander over here, sorry. And he's going to be able to claim those 2 there. So you're going to have a lot more metal income than most other players. Not only that, but you do have access to this geo up here. While it's slightly exposed to the ocean, so that's something to bear in mind. If you do lose the ocean, a lot of the time you will unfortunately lose this geo. It is still going to be fantastic nonetheless. So getting into the actual build. So he's going to start off with 2 mexes. He's going to go into a wind turbine, then into his 3rd mex, then 3 more wind turbines. Now this is going to depend on the wind in your game. If your wind drops all the way down to 1, 2, maybe even 3, then I would very much recommend a solar collector. They are very metal dense, but don't forget, later on you can always reclaim this for the full refund if need be. Now he's going to hand off 2 of those wind turbines to his air player, and that's going to be Desty over here. And that's going to pay for a transport. It's something that you might have to mention to them at the start of the game. A lot of the relatively experienced air players will just provide you with the transport anyway, but it's something to bear in mind. So he's going to go into the bot lab, and he's going to go into 2 more wind turbines, and that's just to help him produce the first Lazarus. Now there are trees in the area, so I would always recommend going for res bots when you've got foliage, quite a lot of foliage. In this case, he's going to go for 4. So the first thing he's going to produce is a single res bot while he's making these wind turbines. I'm just going to speed it up quickly. So he's made those 2, and then he's going to power out the res bot. Now, once you've got the first res bot out, you're then going to go for 2 constructors, and that res bot is going to produce enough energy to have your commander assist this factory. Just going to make sure that the resources are on ephemera. It's a little bit of a bug in the replay sometimes where it will display these resources up in the top incorrectly. So the best way to deal with that is to click on a player from the enemy team and then click back on the player you want to spectate. So the res bot there, plus 58 energy, and that's going to be consistent 58 energy all the way through these trees. So the first constructor, you're going to queue down to these 2 mexes here. As soon as you get your transport, you're going to give that constructor a lift down here. Just remember to re-queue him once he gets down there. And the second constructor that comes out is going to start a construction turret and then immediately go for this mex and the geo. The commander is going to turn and start building the construction turret. And the reason you don't leave the constructor behind to do it is because the constructor has build power of 80. So it's going to take quite a while for it to sit there and build a construction turret. Whereas the commander, on the other hand, has a build power of 300. So he's going to get that out a lot faster. And he's not going to need too much help at all. Now from there, you're going to go back into 3 Lazarus. You're going to go into a grunt. And you're going to go into a anti-air bot. Now again, the last 3 Lazarus are just so that you can get your energy income. And you're not going to stall at all. But once you've got that construction turret up, you can go ahead, bring the transport back, pick up your commander and bring him over here to start in the ocean. The grunt and the anti-air bot are going to come down and defend this beach. So occasionally what some of these players will do, sometimes this player, sometimes this player, I've noticed people going from this spot often like to go hovers, but they'll build hovers and they'll build a few seekers to try and sneak in down here and actually deal quite a bit of damage. So once those are out, feel free to go ahead and reclaim your bot lab. You should have your commander over here building these mechs and the naval yard at the perfect time that you're not going to overflow. So just bear that in mind. Once this finishes being eaten up, you'll get the 620 all at once. He actually doesn't finish the grunt there. That's something that I would be very wary of. Having a grunt down here to try and catch those seekers as they come through is really valuable. So just bear that in mind. Make sure you get that finished up. Now, the reason for the anti-air bot, I'm actually going to pause it quickly, is because this player is often going to be provided with a transport, and they are often going to get their commander over to the island. Now, if you can convince this player to hand you a fighter as well, you can oftentimes place it here and potentially intercept the commander coming over. If you do manage to intercept the commander, or if you notice that they do not send their commander over here, so you're going to actually scout that with the anti-air bot. So the anti-air bot, as you can see, is actually going to come over here. If that's the case, then feel free to claim this yourself. Although a lot of the times when you're against a high level player, they are going to claim this almost always. So the commander is going to start by building a metal extractor, and then he's going to go straight into the naval yard. The transport is going to come back and pick up this construction turret. Now, in case you haven't seen some of my other videos where I mention it, you can in fact pick up construction turrets with transports. That's something that a lot of players actually don't know about. And it can be very powerful. Construction turrets are very efficient for their build power for their cost. So that's something to bear in mind. Another thing that I'd like to bring up is the fact that this player here is going to go get into the water much quicker. So they've only got 3 mexes and then they go straight in the water, whereas you have to go into a bot lab and a whole lot of units before you actually get into the water. But that is not a problem, because while the commander cannot degun while he's underwater, in fact if you stand up here he can degun, he can still use his light laser attack, which as you can see deals fine against the scouts. He's actually used the construction turret there to try and reclaim that a little bit as well, which is fantastic. Oh, an air player actually coming over and trying to catch that commander off guard. So if you can shoot down the air transport while the commander's in it, it will destroy the commander. And it's quite a big, hefty loss. So to start off with, naval units, you're going to go into 5 supporters, and that's just to deal with early game harassment from the supporters or catch the enemy herring. A lot of the times they'll bring the herring down here because the herring can actually reach these 2 metal extractors. Sometimes the constructor will build dragon's teeth here. While it is a deterrent, it's not a completely fail-safe idea, because the herring will eventually go through the dragon's teeth. This constructor is going to come up and give this constructor a hand building the geothermal power plant. So that's the one that was from down here. You can build that one, and then rally it up here. But at the same time, you're also going to build a herring of your own, and that's going to provide a line of sight. As you can see down there, line of sight of 670, whereas a lot of the ships are line of sight of 500. Also provides a little bit of sonar to catch any sort of submarines, and while it can't deal with them, it can certainly give you a little bit of a heads up. Now, this is a Cortex build. If you are Armada in this case, then I would argue going for maybe 3 dolphins. You could go for 2 submarines, and then you can go into just destroyers. With your Cortex, you want to rely on Riptides quite a bit, because they are so much DPS for the cost. So you're going to go into the herring, and then you're going to go into the construction ship, into 2 assault frigates, and then 1 destroyer. And that's going to cover your bases for just about anything. So the Riptides can catch any herrings that are trying to pass over here. A lot of the times the enemy player will not actually build Riptides or dolphins or anything. They'll just go straight into sorry, not Riptides, supporters. they'll just go straight into riptides and you can outmaneuver them with the supporters quite well. So the supporters are very good early game, simply because of their speed. They're able to actually catch any sort of run-bys of like seekers and stuff as well as these herrings. A little bit later on when they fall off, you can actually bring them up here, bring them around, and a lot of the times these players will build the tidal generators, say up here or up here, and you can actually catch them off guard. So the commander has finished the shipyard and he's going to start walking over to here, claim this metal extractor, and then he's going to start walking up here. Now, as this extractor is done, you should be starting to build your assault frigates or getting them out ready to escort your commander up here. One thing I will mention is you need to be paying attention to this player. Because you have so many metal extractors on land, this player providing you with T2 is going to be a massive boon. And it's quite a spike in metal income having these all upgraded. Unfortunately, it is quite a hefty position to be in. So you've got to micro quite a lot of things. You've got constructors coming over here to claim this island. He's noticed that it's free with the Thrasher there. Got this constructor dealing with the Geo. So you're going to have your camera all over the place. And sometimes you can definitely overlook the T2. So that's something to bear in mind. He's going to continue walking his commander up. As you can see, the enemy player has in fact built an urchin there. While the commander is a very powerful unit, I would be very careful against torpedoes. Torpedoes do an exceptional amount of damage, and it does not take much to actually kill a commander with it. As you can see there, as soon as he sees it, he's going to pull his commander back. Assault frigates on the other hand, are perfectly fine to deal with this. A lot of the times against torpedo launchers and submarines, you can actually do what a lot of people say is spin to win. So the torpedoes that it fires are going to go in a straight line. They do not correct themselves if the riptide, say, turns. As you can see there, the torpedo, if he continued turning, that would completely miss him. So there's no sort of, it's just a dumbfire torpedo launcher. There's no sort of tracking in it whatsoever. So if your riptide is spinning, then the torpedo is actually going to have a tough time hitting it. And that goes the same for submarines. A lovely pick off there of that construction ship that was trying to get away after building that. Fantastic use of the supporters. Unfortunately, a little bit of an APM stall with the construction bot, but that is completely and utterly guaranteed with this build. And that's simply because, again, there are so many different things that require your attention here that it is going to be difficult to... It's going to be very difficult to keep on top of all of it. Right, so the geothermal power plant's done. He's going to go into an energy storage, and that's just going to give him a little bit more of a buffer room. So the energy storage is actually going to hold 6,000. So even if it goes right the way up and then he starts consuming quite a lot of energy, he's going to have quite a bit of a buffer before he starts bottoming out completely. Now, naval units don't require very much energy at all. They're incredibly metal dense. So he's going to take advantage of this Geo by building more converters. And he's actually going to build them up here with it. And that's simply because construction bot would take quite a while to walk down here. While you can use the transport, that's actually... Always noticed the bomber coming in. Unfortunately, the herring and the anti-air bot is up here, so they're not going to be able to protect him against that. So that'll be down to his air player protecting with the fighters. Unfortunately, the air player has only just noticed it. That's fine though. It's not like it is irreparable damage. He's still got the transport, which is actually going up to pick the T2 up now. As you can see, he's well on top of that, which is incredibly impressive, actually. Myself in this position, I often forget completely about T2. It's not until like 10 minutes, 10 minutes in where I'll be like, it's a bit of an issue there. Anyway, so the main build is going to be 3 riptides, 1 oppressor, and 1 herring. And you can put your factory on repeat for that. So that's a very good unit composition to actually aim for. Now he's walking his commander out. And the reason I like the fact that he's bringing his commander out is because this player is going to be in the sea before you, and he's going to get a little bit of an advantage on the ship numbers. So bringing the commander out, the commander obviously has that light laser attack, which can attack the ships. Unfortunately, you can't degun them. That would be a little bit broken, I think. But he also fills quite a supportive role. So commanders obviously can reclaim, they can repair. Not only that, but he can also build defenses. He can destroy metal extractors and then build the metal extractors on them. So if you push up enough, you can actually just steal this metal extractor from your opponent. Provides sonar, provides vision. If the enemy has all riptides, which some people will do, because they are so the cost efficient, the damage efficiency to the cost is absolutely ridiculous for these. I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe got a slight numbers nerf in the future. A lot of the times people just prefer to mass these and ignore the destroyers. In that case, you can just walk the commander underneath and go to town. Another thing is, if you're in a rough position, such as this player here, you can pull the commander out and you can actually bait the enemy army into the commander. Now again, when the commanders die, they produce a rather large explosion and they can actually obliterate anything nearby. In fact, if you control D, so self-destruct, then the explosion is much larger and actually deals a lot more damage. As you can see there, he's pulled one construction bot down from there to help the T2 constructor. Would maybe like to see another one on there, or even a construction turret. Because of how metal dense ships can be. A lot of the times it'll be a mirror matchup, so you'll be Cortex versus Cortex simply because of how good the assault frigate is. And, well, unless you manage to pull off some fancy micro tricks, such as backing off and letting the enemy come to you in range of your destroyers, or say detonating a commander underneath the enemy army, a lot of times it's just going to come down to who has more stuff. This is a fantastic play. If he was to self-destruct his commander there, he would take out the entire army and be free to come down. So that's something you do need to be very careful of. However, if you do not commit and self-destruct the commander, you are going to be in a position like this. So he's pulled one destroyer off to kill the comm off and kept his units safe. Now, because naval units are so metal dense, this is going to be something that needs to be fought over. As you can see there, he's immediately brought the res sub in to eat up the commander corpse because that is so much metal. I would like to see the commander move up and start eating that himself, maybe even take out the res bot. As you can see there, he's just going to repair his units up, make sure he can deal with this so that he can continue to eat that. But that is a massive pickup right there. So from now, this constructor is over here. He's going to produce a few light laser towers up here himself. That's just to stop. Once you've got 4, if any commander comes up here, you cannot see above this ridgeline. So a commander walking up here would not be able to see these light laser towers, and they would be able to destroy him before he gets up to the top. And he's just going to scale wind from there. He's going to continue with this. In fact, he's added on a few res subs. I wouldn't build too many of them. I'd build 1 or 2 here and there. And that's simply because it is not going to be completely necessary with the commander up here. Now, with the enemy comm going down, he's realized that he has more stuff than his opponent here. So he's going to actually engage. Now he needs to be careful because the enemy is so close to their shipyard. Their reinforcements are going to come to them much sooner, but he is going to be able to overpower. Now in this situation, a lot of times this player will they'll either continue going like this, or they'll actually start using the comm turrets along here to eat up the shipyard and try and go into a land economy. And Ephemera is immediately going to take advantage of this by walking his comm up and degunning the geothermal power plant. With the destroyers, if you bring the destroyers here, they can in fact hit the geothermal power plant, so they can be in range. A lot of times you may have to A-click it, but you will be able to see the explosion in the fog of war. Alternatively, if you can get your commander into this position and just walk up and degun it, that is much better. Now, the reason being, a lot of the times this player is not going to react to this player here losing the sea completely until he has actually lost the sea completely and there are destroyers knocking on his front door. If it's a higher level player, a lot of the times you will see him actually produce either amphibious units or go into a naval lab himself, so that's something to bear in mind. But if this player does not react, then feel free to take him out. Now, what he's got to think about now is actually starting to transition. So he's taking this player out, he's taking this player out. There's not a whole lot more he can do with naval units. And so what he's going to do is line them up along the shoreline just to stop any sort of hovers, to catch any hovers or amphibious units from the back player themselves. In fact, he's producing sprinters. He's going to start eating up this reclaim, as you can see there, and he's going to immediately start putting it into transition. So he's built more constructors up, and he's going to go into a little bit more energy. But he's going to walk his commander out with the construction ship and go into amphibious. Now, depending on how quickly you can take the sea, depends on how quickly you want to transition. If you manage to take the sea before, say, the 15-minute mark, then I would transition into the amphibious complex. You can see it just there. You want to go for salamanders. Now, the salamanders have EMP resistance, so even if the enemy was to be Cortex and had shurikens, they could quite easily shrug a lot of the shurikens off. Or if it's later, then you can go straight into T2. You can get the Mel extractors upgraded and you can go into a flagship. But right now, he's noticing that no air, the highest OS enemy player, is gone air, and he's very good at going air. And he's noticed that his ally is maybe lacking a little bit behind, so he's going to make the decision to transition into seaplanes. Now, you could argue that T2 air is just better, but he doesn't have any sort of production on land. But he does have production on the water with these. So he's going to go into seaplanes. They're considered tier 1.5, should we say. So against T2, they're not going to do particularly great, but they are certainly going to help quite a bit. Because he's managed to reclaim all of this metal, and he's also got the geo going up, the sheer amount of resources he has access to, it puts him in such a powerful position that a lot of people will maybe mistake this for being able to do anything you want. Unfortunately, at this point, you've got to look at you've got to do what Ephemera is doing and actually take a look at your team. So he's noticed that air's being hindered, so he's going to help with the air. But at the same time, he's going to go for the Salamander Rush simply because he did in fact take the sea relatively quickly. But at the same time as that, you've got to scale your economy and continue to scale your economy. You've got to make sure that everything's upgraded. Unfortunately, he missed that max there, so I expect he's going to send the con down in a second. But you've also got to work on the land economy. So in this game, it might be tempting to go for a naval economy, whether that's naval fusions up here, naval energy converters. Now, naval energy converters, I would say, that's perfectly fine if you want to go for like a row of naval energy converters up here. That's absolutely fantastic, especially the T2 ones. I think they're absolutely fantastic. But you want to go for a land economy. So this is something that you think about while doing all of this. It's going to mix in a few amphibious airbots in there, simply because no air, of course, completely dominating the air battle in this game. Unfortunately, his other sea is taking a few hits as well, so that's something he's got to be cautious about. But at the same time, you've got to think about doing damage yourself. So he's going to get up to 10 salamanders, and then he's going to go for the attack. I believe there's got 10 there. Yep, 10. Oh, he might go into a few more. He might bring them, say, down into this player. That's something that I would recommend. Unfortunately, the pulsar there, he doesn't have line of sight, so you can only see the dots, and he doesn't have any pinpointers, so the pulsar's not going to be, a lot of the times, not going to hit anything that it's firing at over there. But he sees it and brings it back. So now that they're out, he's going to go into T2, and that's to scale his economy. There's quite a few mexes. There's 3 there. 1 there. So that's 4 mexes. That's going to be relatively nice to get upgraded. But not only that, he can use that T2 constructor to go into, say, a T3 gauntry or anything that he wants, such as Black Hydra, Messenger. One thing I will say, if they've actually built the Geo up and say they've built pulsars, or they've built wardens, which are the plasma defense. If I go and grab a constructor, where's his T2? The T2 up here? The T2's up here, okay. As you can see, there's so much going on at the same time that even me with perfect vision, I'm struggling to find everything. There's his constructor. Okay, I can't select the wallet or anything. Fantastic bomber run there. There we go. Okay, so the warden there, the keeper, sorry. I believe the warden is the Cortex version. This is a Armada constructor. And that's a plasma deflector. So any sort of plasma rounds that, so Riptides, the destroyers, including the Black Hydra, so the flagships, they are all plasma as well. They are going to be blocked by the wardens, so sometimes it's better to use the missile boats. The missile boats have got fantastic range, 1,550, so as long as you've got radar line of sight on them, in fact you can also dumbfire them, so A-click on the Geo, you're going to destroy that Geo eventually, as well as A-clicking on the metal extractors. He does try for a commander push here. If you can get a commander in the back line, you can often take this player out completely. The salamanders did quite a lot of damage, but they did not kill the fusion reactors or the build power. That's something you want to aim for. Unfortunately, he's going to lose the commander, but that is completely fine. So he's going to go for a few T2 AA ships. The T2 AA ships are absolutely god tier when it comes to AA. They will absolutely shred any air units that come over, as well as a few Pathfinders, which are naval engineers, and they're just going to help the advanced construction sub to get the T2 metals up. And then he's going to go straight into a flagship. Now he's only going to build 1. I think it's a bit of a trap to build multiple, because you really don't need them. 1 flagship is going to make short work of this player and this player with no problem whatsoever. But at the same time, at home, he's going to be scaling a few construction turrets into eventually a fusion reactor and an APHIS, because the APHIS is just a hell of a lot more efficient than the fusion. But then at the same time, he's also upgrading all of his mexes, and he's also building the seaplane swarmers, and that's to help with the air. As you can see there, the Black Hydra is almost going to be done. It's going to bring that back to upgrade the mechs. I'd like to see him bring it down and upgrade this one as well. But you need to be paying attention to what's happening with the game. A lot of the times, people will want to build hovers. So, trying to get back into the ocean once somebody's taken it, like Ephemera has here, can be very difficult. If you're one of these players, might go into the regular hovers, which are, they're not amazing. They trade very badly against the actual naval units themselves, simply because the price is a premium in order to actually go on land and sea. But once you've taken it, The tech or eco player at the back here will oftentimes or sometimes go into the T3 hovers, which can actually be quite a problem for the T1 naval units as well as the cruisers. So if you do see them, the Despot, the battleship, is definitely what you want to go for. Unfortunately, there's no point going in subs because the subs cannot hit them. So the Despot is going to be your answer to those. And from here, you're going to try and take out the enemy bases. So even if you do not have line of sight, while you're firing this, you can A-click as he's done here. He's going to aim for those fusion reactors that were scouted earlier. And he's going to do plenty of damage. And you can actually see them explode through the fog of war. So he's now going to continue to aim for things that he can see and that he's scouted. Expect in a second he's going to turn his attention to this player here. But as you can see there, he's going to go into an anti-nuke actually, and then straight into advanced fusion reactors. And that's simply because he has the economy to continue building. In fact, he's even going into an air plant, or he was going to go into an air plant over here. Another thing that he's included, a Juno. Absolutely fantastic. Love to see these. They are anti-radar, but they are also anti-minefields. So a lot of the times people will build mines along here, or say in this position, they'll build mines up here if they lose the sea. And you can use the Juno ahead of a attack to actually detonate all those mines. So that player's taken out. This player was originally taken out of the game. He's actually built back up. And in fact, this player was hindered by a dramatic amount as well. So that's 3 players that he has managed to either eliminate or completely stem their involvement in this game. But on the flip side, if you are able to take the sea, you do need to be careful that all 3 of these players are going to be the ones retaliating. So if you're not decisive, or say you do not make the transition fast enough into the amphibious, it can be the case that you'll have all 3 of these players gang up on you. So that's something you want to avoid. The mobile anti-nukes, that's a fantastic addition. Obviously you do not want to be nuked. And it can be quite difficult to, say, get an anti-nuke up in your position because you're quite isolated. So a lot of the times this eco player will build the anti-nuke for both players. This player will often build the anti-nuke for both these players. And this player will also build the anti-nuke for both these players, but you're sort of left on your own. So that's something to bear in mind. Another thing to bear in mind is if the enemy does in fact end up going hovers, or say has the islands, they'll often build a hovercraft plant, and they will build a single rocket hover, which can come down here and it can actually hit the Geo. The regular ships are not able to fire over the top of the cliff. That's quite a large cliff there. Alternatively, if say an enemy commander or an enemy construction ship is able to make it down here, they can actually build a light laser tower on the top, which will take out your Geo. So that's another thing to bear in mind. A lot of the times when you've actually built the Geo, it's sometimes safe just to pop 2 light laser towers down there, and that should defend against that. So once you're in this position and you've got it secured and you've got your economy scaling, the only real thing you've got to worry about is maybe marauders. So marauders can come from this player here. It can sometimes come from this player here if you do not eliminate them quick enough. A lot of the times they'll be the 2 players that will be the ones going into marauders. Unfortunately, the T2 naval, there isn't anything that can actually catch up to the marauders. So if you do not catch them early and are able to cut them off, they can sneak through and do quite a lot of damage. So that's something you want to be careful of. While the submarines are relatively good, I believe the fast assault submarine is one of the few things that can actually deal quite a bit of damage to them. Alternatively, the buccaneers are quite good. It's sometimes best just to place a few torpedoes around the area. With the T2 constructor, once you've built up the advanced metal extractors, It's essentially up to you what you want to do with them. If the enemy air player looks like they're going to be a threat, then feel free to spam a few naval bird shots around. As you can see, he's got them up here so that the air player can't kite around. But at the same time, it is your job to put as much pressure onto these players as you can and continue with that. So once you've got the land economy up, one thing you can do that Ephemera is going to do is go into a T3 gauntry. Alternatively, you can go into a few bombers if your air player recovers and say manages to deal quite a bit of damage to this player. You can go into seaplane bombers, or alternatively you can go into air bombers. I mean, at this point you have so many resources, you can do whatever you want. But you do have to bear in mind that it is up to you to actually get something done. So spend your resources, build as many units as you can, build as much. As you can see there, he's building a few despots actually, just to make sure that he is not going to get caught off guard by the hovers. The amphibious rolling bombs are something that are quite difficult to deal with. In fact, I've struggled to deal with these myself in the past. What Ephemera does is he actually builds the torpedo gunships. So as soon as he saw it, he started building the torpedo gunships. They are absolutely fantastic for taking these out. It renders these essentially useless, whereas quite a few things such as the urchins tend to miss because they're not particularly great at hitting moving targets. As you can see there, a few of them do hit quite nicely. It's actually going to go into subs as well. It can be tempted to build up Buccaneers, the actual cruisers, but the cruisers' depth charge range is very limited. So a lot of the times they will actually take your cruisers out before your cruisers can even deal with them. So the torpedo gunships are fantastic there. Just bear in mind you do have to babysit your Black Hydra or your flagship with the rest of your units. So I'm just going to speed it up here because he's going to go for an experimental country and then he's going to go for a marauder run by. I shall see you in a second once he is ready for that. Okay, I'll bring you back into the game. Right now he has actually just reclaimed his T3 lab because he's finished building his marauder attack. I believe he's going to go into hovers here. Yep. So he's got his marauders up. As you can see there, he's got 18 of them. He has softened up the defenses from this player with the Black Hydra. In fact, he's managed to actually scout a fusion reactor there, which he's going to take out. It's important to note that the seaplanes do in fact have a scout, watcher, advanced radar, sonar plane. It's always best to fly them every now and again to provide a bit of vision, whether the enemy's built something new that you can target with the Black Hydra, or if they're, say, preparing to counterattack. It can be quite often a good idea. But having seen all this air, he's going to go into hover anti-airs. Now this is something you can do. It's not recommended to go into the hover tanks themselves because they are usually quite weak compared to ground units or naval units that are specialized. But you can see the Junos that he built on the island coming into play there, just clearing any mines ahead of this push. He's going to follow it up with goons, which are going to be the opposite of marauders, so they're going to be quite difficult to deal with for single target units. So the units that are strong against marauders are going to be relatively bad at killing off these hovercraft. He's also going to come straight in with the seaplane swarmers to try and deal with some of the air that maybe want to try and stop these marauders. And this is essentially a very, very powerful push with all of his spaces covered. So trying to hold something like this is incredibly difficult. As you can see here, he's going to completely and utterly roll over Nowhere. Nowhere's got no answer for this, and he detonates it there. Now this game is going to go on for a little bit longer. This player actually manages to hold out with a massive swarm of snipers. But in conclusion, I think this has been a fantastic build by Ephemera. A lot of people, unfortunately, in a lot of games, you'll see people that decide to just build land economy and take advantage of those mexes as well as the Geo in order to try to eco as fast as possible, but it's not a good build, unfortunately. A couple destroyers or a herring can easily destroy these two metals, and even just a single little hovercraft, the missile hovercraft, from which is essentially T1 200 metal, is able to shoot up and destroy this geothermal power plant. So that essentially leaves you with the 4 metal that you would get anywhere else, and unfortunately somebody knocking on your front door with the sea. So it is 100% of the time you are going to be contesting the sea. If you lose the sea, then that is a different story. Unfortunately, it can be quite difficult. A lot of people like to put mines here to stop any marauders coming in, but again, if they've got access to the islands, they can just use a Juno. It is a very difficult situation to come back from, unfortunately. Anyway, that is going to be it. I will quickly go to the end screen now and show you the resources. One more quick thing that I'd like to mention is you can see that he has actually reclaimed the hovers, and he's actually built a T3 lab up closer to the front line. Once you've got this position under locks, it can be quite beneficial to bring the T3 gauntry up here and actually produce the larger units a lot closer to the enemy. This saves a lot of time for them walking, say, all the way up here. You can even see him actually walling that off completely. So the T2 walls, they cannot be walked through, they do have to be destroyed. And that is going to be the game. As you can see there, the game went on for about another 10 minutes. It was just this player holding on. He actually had a lot of aces and did really well this game. But Ephemera on top, completely and utterly destroying it. Go into team stats quick. Metal used, metal produced. This player did really well ecoing. Unfortunately, didn't come online maybe fast enough if I was to give him a bit of criticism. So he did continue ecoing for quite a while, which is hence the metal produced. But at the same time, Ephemera towards the end there was second. And considering the fact that he was contesting the sea, eliminated 3 players at the same time, I think he did absolutely fantastic. Energy produced a very similar story. A few other players actually went a little bit ham on the energy, maybe building up those aces and then not taking advantage with the actual converters. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next one.